relationships of the separate geometrical dichotomies coming out of the whole, working towards the particular. I don't want to lose sight at all of what we started to talk about at the very beginning, which was that we are searching for the possibility that there may be better ways in which the older life may treat the experiences it has, and better ways of transmitting the data regarding the experiences, the conceptions, and the generalized patterning principles which are discovered as operative are approximately identical. And so we have similar triangles and similar quadrangles and similar polygons of various kinds. And I would point out that, for instance, we take a square, and then we say we make modular subdivisions of its edges, and we get 4 similar squares. The same way, I take a triangle and I make a modular subdivision of its edges, I get 4 similar triangles. Now, I'm going to take the same proposition and make it not a symmetrical quadrangle, but an asymmetrical quadrangle. There's one side's edge and another side's edge, another side's edge again. Now I'm going to make uniform modular subdivision of its edges. Each one's divided into 2. Now I'm going to interconnect those. And finally, we do not get 4 similar quadrangles. So I'm going to take any triangle, a long edge, a little edge, the other side's edge. I'm going to bisect its edges, make modular subdivision of its edges to modulus of 2, frequency of 2. And we're going to interconnect those points, and we find that we get 4 similar triangles. Triangles, no matter how asymmetrical the original triangle, will, when modularly subdivided in their edges, are interconnectable with similar triangles. For triangles, when we make the modular subdivision of the edges of the tetrahedron, getting up here and in there, we will find that what holds true for the single triangle also holds true for the tetrahedron. The tetrahedron can be apparently asymmetrical as you want, but as long as we make a uniform modular subdivision of its edges, we will and interconnect them, form on this unit, and then interconnect this edge and so forth. I get into even more trouble with my asymmetries, and I do not get 8 identical or similar volumetric units. The tetrahedron then has the interesting tetrahedron. Therefore, when we begin to fractionate our universe from the totality into the first conceivable set and the first take this group. I can place one ball on one triangular base. That gives me a symmetrical arrangement of the tetrahedron. But I can also place that ball on a larger triangle, and I can place it asymmetrically. And I have a base of a triangle here and an altitude, and the area of the triangle must remain the same. The rope would be very long. I can move it in any position I want, nesting it in here, and the altitude would always be the same, and the base would always be the same. So I could do that. Let me I'm going to make a kind of rubber tetrahedron, which we'll do in our imagination. I have a rubber band between my feet here on the floor, and I ask one of you theoretically to come over here, and the rubber band comes out and makes a triangle on the floor. And I hold this baseline between my feet, and you take a hold of the apex of the triangle on the floor there, and you can move that apex along the floor on a line parallel to my feet to any position you want. You can go out halfway around the earth, or around the earth if you want, and the altitude is going to remain the same between the difference between these two parallel lines, my feet and that line. So that altitude being the same and the base being the same, the area of that triangle is always going to be the same. It might get to look very much just like a line, because it gets thinner and thinner as I pull it further and further away. But I may get to where a line really has then an area which is just the same as the very clear symmetrical triangle. All right? Then I have another relation to that triangle on the floor. I have three rubber bands coming from the three apexes of the triangle on the floor up to our hand here. I can move this top one parallel to the floor. As long as they're parallel to the floor, the altitude of this tetrahedron is going to be the same. So two of you, one can take a hold of this top one here and start running out, always staying parallel to this floor. You go anywhere you want as long as your hand is parallel to the floor, and the tetrahedron will have the same volume because the altitude remains the same and the base remains the same. So one of you could be running around with this and going all kinds of positions. The other one is going along this line, possibly miles and miles, hundreds of miles out, shuttling back and forth. The base remains the same, the altitude remains the same, therefore the tetrahedron remains the same. This would give you a good way of seeing that. Now, I kept just one base line with my feet here. That's all I asked to do. I have to have one effect of turning it at some angle other than 180 degrees, and very frequently 90 degrees. As for instance, I gave you just the two balls approaching each other yesterday and turning on one another and becoming the tetrahedron. And they approach. The effect on one another being precessional, stuff right this way. Now then, I'm going to take three balls like this and look at them precessionally and think of their coming together. And in doing that, we get a two-frequency tetrahedron. On a two-frequency base, I put one ball on there. If you will interconnect the centers of gravity of the three spheres on the corner of the base with the center of gravity of the white one, the geometry that you'll get is our friend the 1/8 octahedron. This is the 1/8 octahedron. I guess you can read the angle with your eye. Now, I come to the next, let's see. I had a ball nesting in the first layer, which is this top ball here. Then I nested a ball here. That's the 1/8 octahedron. I take the next layer, and I can't nest a ball at the center because there's a ball there. So I pass that one up, and I come on to the next layer. There is a hole at the center of this one, therefore I can nest a ball there. If I do this, and we interconnect the centers of gravity, the corner spheres, with the center of gravity of this top ball here, we get the 1/4 tetrahedron, as you can see it. All right, very interesting. You may have thought me to be quite arbitrary when I fractionated the octahedron into the 1/8 octahedra, or when I fractionated the tetrahedron into the 1/4 tetrahedron around the center of gravity. Octahedron, then I have to skip a layer, and third nestability gives me 1/4 tetrahedron. Those are the first sets of events. There's nothing else about it. So that as I begin into a series of, and these are frequency events, so the very earliest stages of, and I'm going to, if we just look at them like that, they don't do anything for you, but I'm going to precess them. So one of them rotates like this, 60 degrees, and they come in together, and this makes This makes a cube. That is the first cube that appears in the terms of spheres or frequencies. You cannot make a cube just out of 8 balls. They roll all over each other, and they're completely unstable. This is the first stable cube that occurs, and it is a two-frequency affair, and it occurs then just exactly as it begins to occur in the atoms, only at a point where we get certain plural frequencies. And now I can't make another cube masked out of balls by just putting on another layer on there. The big cubes are the 1/8 octahedron. Pull one out. And I'm going to take them off of all of the corners of that cube. Take off the 8 corners. And what we have left is our friend the vector equilibrium. This is now you see 5 balls to an edge. That means it's 4 frequencies. This is a 4-frequency vector equilibrium. And in it, and on one of these corners here is a ball at the center of the system. There's no ball at the center of the system. This is a new nucleus beginning to build up. This begins to get up to the really unstable conditions of the transuraniums before you get up into the where the patterns of it were very similar. I'll put the corner back on here. The corner down here. So as you look at it, once it is cubical, you tend to see certain square patterns. You see these square holes here? Those are the holes that we found out of the vector equilibrium, the concave vector equilibrium holes of yesterday. You don't tend to see anything but square holes when you're looking at the square aspect. The minute I take away those corners and get into the vector equilibrium, then in the vector equilibrium you tend to see both here's the triangular aspects and here are the square aspects. But when I take the vector equilibrium, it in itself is fractionatable this way, and there we get all just nothing but triangular aspect. At its center it gets into the closest packing, completely triangular aspect. This comes past simply layers and layers of omnitriangulation. So that we also remember something I showed you yesterday. Did you see what I just picked up? Would you put those together in a logical, symmetrical manner? Stand where everybody can see.
Don't seem to want to mess with anything.
I've given these to, don't have any periodicon. I've given these to, in group of scientists. I've handed down in the audience and asked them to do it, and they do just what you're doing. They keep matching the sides. Right. So, now you precess it, which means we rotate it. Quite clearly, nobody would think of doing this because here's a quadrangle with 5 balls on one edge and 4 balls on the other. Therefore, the only way they could possibly match would be like that, the way you did it. It would not occur to you to precess it, but we do precess it, and we bring them together, and there she is with the tetrahedron. Really logical. And what happens is that the 5 matches the 4, and the 4 matches the 5, because it is not 3-dimensional X, Y, Z. It is 60-degree angulation. So there's our friend convergence and divergence, and nothing could be better proof to you of the fallibility of the way we've been brought up in our thinking. And so I find it very exciting that the scientists, though they feel themselves extremely versed in their formulas and statements of their relationships, they have not entertained conceptuality, and when they get conceptual, they always go like this. I take the 3-ball, 4-ball, now the red one. This group of balls will fit exactly inside of that group. There's just a space for it. And this number of balls is exactly 120. This set of balls is 20, and this set is 100, so the total would be 120. What is there about this group of balls that I have in my left hand that it has some interesting, some significance about it? First place, there's no ball in the center of that group. Do you agree? There's no ball in the center. There's just a little space in there. There's no ball in the center of that group. Therefore, when I nest this one that has no ball in the center of itself, as nested on here, there's no ball in the center of the group. You can look right through it. There is a ball at the center of this group, but it's on the base. So when I nest this on top of here, there's still no ball in the center of the group. 20 balls in symmetrical arrangement as tetrahedron represents the largest, now there is another ball in the center of that group, isn't it? But it's on the outside of the system. In fact, you'll find the same triangle on the outside of each of the layers. Here it is, here it is, here it is. So if I put another layer here, now the center ball is going to be at the center of the system. That is, when we get to a 5-ball, which is a 4-frequency, a 4-frequency tetrahedron has a ball at the center of it. A 3-frequency tetrahedron does not have a ball at the center of it. That is exactly what we have really in the condition of these balls, and there's no ball at the center of the system. That is the largest number of balls that I can have without a ball at the center of the system. I told you I was looking for unique kinds of patterns. In other words, I could have 120, which is a whole lot, without a ball at the center of the system to act as a nucleus. There's no nucleus here. I can have, that's quite a large chunk of symmetry, tetrahedral symmetry, or 7-frequency tetrahedron, without having any nucleus. Therefore, I won't vie with any other nucleus. Therefore, these are really quite typical of the kinds of agglomerations I can have in respect to various atoms, without having any vying with the nucleus of that system. That number 120, number 20 and number 120 both show up very prominently in the series of numbers which are beginning to be now. Here would be the little wheel in cross section, and we see the tire in it. There's the metal between it, and then we have the little journal here for the shaft to go through. Now, instead of having this kind of a seating of the wheel, I could make that wheel by having a little here. I could have a little roller bearing here, and another roller bearing. They mounted on a little shaft, little short section of roller bearing. So as I looked at any one of the little wheel cores from the sides, here's the hub going through here, and here would be a little roller bearing, and another little roller bearing. It's very easy to have a set of those little roller bearings around the edge. And they're nice little ball bearings on the side, so they move very, very easily. Okay. So that as this tire sits on here, it sits on a roller bearing. Now I'm going to make the tire out of I'm going to start making a tubing. It's an extremely elastic tire, very pure rubber, and it's made out of a piece of tubing. Now I'm going to bend the tubing around, bring it back to itself, and vulcanize the ends. Now then, the tube has not been formed in such a way that the interior part of the wheel, it has less rubber in it than has the outside. We have the same amount of rubber in the whole of the tubing because we started as a straight tube, brought the ends around together. Therefore, when I mount this tube up on these wheels, and I'm going to blow it full of air so it's fairly firm. Now when I rotate I can rotate the tire this way in its bearings, so that it just simply goes around and around and around here. And it can't get longer, so it can't get out of the bearings, but the bearings make it very easy for it to rotate around. So you get a second kind of rotation. In other words, these things are going to rotate that way. Okay. Now I'm going to change the shape of the wheel mildly. I'm going to, instead of having it nice and round, here's that tire with this little roll of bearings inside it. I'm going to make the tire, I'm going to just put three main roller bearings in it, and I'm going to make the tire triangular in shape. And we put our little roller bearings which give it that kind of shape. So that this gets to be more of a cam than a continuous wheel. It's going to look a little more like our model, like this model here. And now I'm going to put on the outside of each one of these truss bearings, I've got little pieces of paper that hold those wheels pressing against the next wheel so I get friction. I'm going to put in a bearing here, but I'm going to put a coil spring that pushes that wheel up against the next wheel. Now, as I begin to rotate one of those wheels, if it gets to the high point like this, but it pushes them very far apart. And as I rotate it now and gets to the low point, they'll come in closer together. They will do exactly what that other model that I was getting, run from the vector equilibrium down into the octahedron and out again. So to rotate the whole system, just the rotation of one wheel not only rotates all the other wheels, but the whole system oscillates from octahedron to vector equilibrium. And as I'm doing that, I can also do one other thing. I can rotate each of those tires like this, which will make, as I rotate this tire here, outwardly towards me, it will involute, the whole tire will involute. If I try to twist it like this, the whole tire will involute. And supposing I take off this corner, this gets to be hexagonal. Take off this corner and it gets to be nice even hexagon, doesn't it? Lord Kelvin's, the word tetracadeca, 14-faceted figure, is then the vector equilibrium at a three-frequency level with truncation of its triangular by competent experimental work. If you can make them available, and they are available when there's emergency occurs, and he tries them out and he finds they work, well, put it down and say, I'm not going to be using that again. Then there's another emergency, picks it up again. After a while, you may begin to have to use your tools, and you, by competent design, could then begin to streamlining by virtue of the use of your tools into doing things in such a way as to make the pattern of man on life, on Earth, a success. I think it's a pretty extraordinary kind of a realization we all have, and your relationship to me and what I can tell you about what I've found out, and you do see that I have been exploring in ways that are very tantalizing. My relationship to you and yours to me is one where we must foster whatever it is I'm able to give you that looks orderly and regular, and I must demonstrate to you within the time we're going to be together how I myself organize what I have been able to find out into developing structures and tools for a man that will give him a higher performance per units of invested resource, which would be the test of the economy. And I think at this point I'd like to have a break, and we'll go into another chapter. I mentioned my intuitions and trying to pay attention to my intuitions. I find myself talking about intuition a lot, and I hear other human beings talk also quite a lot about a word called aesthetics. They speak about the way things appear to them. It's the world of aesthetics being something that is not subject to much logical analysis, but extremely persuasive in terms of our senses and our intuitions. I don't like words that don't have good meaning to me. And good meaning to me must have some kind of a conceptual comprehension of the mechanics that are operative. I have a direct meaning for what? There's something else that comes in then into the seeing, and that is the fact that we do not see omnidirection in all directions like the fly's eye, but we see only really a loom in front of us. We begin to check up if we can what the edges of that loom may be. So we take our two fingers out in front of us and we run them off sideways like this, and we get to the point where I'm still seeing both my fingers way here. Even though I'm looking forward at you, I'm seeing them out here. We see almost 180 degrees. So we do have quite a wide vision if we check up on it. But the point is that most of the time, I think I am looking at you. I really can check it. I can see my fingers there now, and I'm taking the trouble to see the fingers there. But I think I'm looking at you out in front of me. I tend to think of myself as seeing in a very much smaller arc than I actually am seeing. In the same way, then, I would point out that we continually tend to focus our senses, our seeing and our concept of the tactile limits of you, and what the things smell like, and what am I hearing, and we tend to think of that as highly focused and addressed. Yet, at the same time, there is something going on out here. In the same way, I've learned that my vision goes even further. That is, when I'm driving my car and somebody is behind me with a light, in addition to seeing his lights in my mirror, if somebody has very bright headlights, we're paying lots of time very little attention to the fact I'm just talking to you and I don't pay attention to the smoke getting in my eyes or whatever it is. There are lots of things that happen to us to which our senses are attuned, but to which we pay no attention. My feeling about what I call intuitions relates to the fact that, as I discussed earlier with you, we are subconsciously coordinate in a fabulous degree. Enormous numbers of patterns going on of our organizing, of pumping my blood through my system, and while the breathing is going on, and charging the energies to the various points. All kinds of nerves continually checking up the sub-regulations of this coordinating all the time going on while we think we're talking about this, just paying no attention. All those other things are going on. But every once in a while you say, well, I got a pain in the neck. So suddenly you're aware of it. But that is after a fairly extreme set of conditions have gone wrong in the coordinating. So I would say that what I call intuition, time and again, relates to the fact that we have enormous subconscious coordination, and there is something we call conscious. And wherever there are conscious and subconscious, there must be a borderline case. There must be a twilight zone, just as I spoke about the twilight zones of irrelevances. Therefore, I really have a borderline case, such as the fact that I really can see my fingers out here, but I'm paying enough attention to it. But really, the rest of the time, I keep forgetting that I am seeing things out here. I think I'm looking out here. So I'd say that not only is the borderline case just angularly, but there's a borderline case in terms of frequencies, and there's a borderline case in the terms of all of our continually getting on with billions of coordinations that are subconsciously operative in our system. That I would say that what I call my intuitions are suddenly an arresting of the focus that I'm preoccupied with into a realization that something else is going on that is significant. That twilight zone begins to be operative, and maybe it's because I'm just getting a pain in the neck. Maybe it's something else that makes me pay attention in other directions. Now, there are, in the terms of frequencies, many kinds of events that occur very, very infrequently. As for instance, we only have winter once a year. That's quite a lot of time apart. And you're liable to just be married once in a whole lifetime. There are many kinds of events that are really very infrequent. And yet, a number of the very infrequent ones are highly periodic. As for instance, we have learned that Halley's planet alien planet will show up every 70 years. Think about some mystical kind of capability. None of the things that I deal in are mystical. The only thing I deal in that's mystical is the whole show. Why universe? If you ask why universe, that's mystery to me. How could universe be so unbelievably coordinated, completely complementary, completely organized and integratable, to be as successfully operative as it is? It seems to me, universe as an invention is way beyond my comprehension. I certainly make that the great mystery. But there's nothing, after I accept universe, that I look upon as necessary to be treated and explained as mystery and mystical. Therefore, my word intuition does relate then to this borderline event which we are being made aware of, a pattern that we're not usually familiar with, maybe something very important. We've had the feeling before. The first time we didn't pay much attention. This time, I really ought to be paying attention to it, so that's my intuition. By the word aesthetics, I mean pretty much the same thing. I mean that there is in our subconscious coordinating extraordinary nicety. Not only do we have such nicety as being able to pattern the quadrillion atoms in our brain, which is fabulous in its 16th of an inch, 30 seconds, getting pretty small, 64th